Hello everyone, in this video I am going to go over shields as a whole and try to convince you guys why you should use shields inside of Grounded 2 with your one-handed weapon builds and how they are actually a underrated gem inside of Grounded 2. And before we begin, 99% of you guys aren't subscribed, so if you haven't, please make sure to subscribe. As if you love Grounded 2, you will love my content and want to come back in the future, and let's get on with the video. So, with the intro, a lot of you might be wondering, how are shields so good in Grounded 2? But before we get to the good, we need to go over the bad of why people think shields are horrible in Grounded 2 to begin with. And for that, we need to go to the previous game to answer that question. You see, in Grounded 1, all shields were actually really good. People used to run them for every single one-handed weapon build. However, Obsidian didn't like that too much, and in the 1.3 update, gave all shields the defensive stance debuff. And what this debuff did was made it to where all of your attacks would do 20% less damage when wielding a shield. Of course, now you can block certain unblockable attacks before, but it didn't feel worth using a shield because of this debuff. However, in Grounded 2, this debuff was actually removed, meaning no matter if you decide to use a shield or not, you will still get the same damage output no matter what. Another thing I would also like to talk about inside of Grounded 2 is the introduction of light and heavy shields. You see, light shields, if you don't perfect parry, a huge chunk of stamina will be drained and a chunk of your health will also be drained in the process. But as an upside, your perfect blocks will do a higher amount of stun damage, allowing you to stun creatures easier just by parrying. Moving on to heavy shields will fully block all of the damage from an incoming attack, as well as reduce the amount of stamina drained from the attack as well. This means, with the correct build, you could technically block infinitely, just as long as the attack isn't too hard and doesn't consume too much stamina in a short amount of time. There are currently 3 unique shields in the game. These shields have their own unique effects that make them different from the other shields that are in the game. Starting off with the first shield, the Crimson Buckler. The Crimson Buckler's unique effect is called Aggressive Parry, and what that does is every parry you do will reflect a portion of damage and stun damage back at the attacker, effectively turning your perfect blocks into a, although low damaging, still a secondary weapon. And combined with the light shield bonus, you could technically stun enemies even if you're using a weapon that's not really meant for stunning enemies like a sword. The only real con is the fact that this is a tier 1 shield, so it will break easier, but that's pretty much the only con with it, so let's move on to the next shield. Moving on to the Bomb Buckler is actually a better version of the Crimson Buckler in my opinion, as the special effect for the shield makes it to where it deals 15 extra spicy damage with 25 spicy buildup when you do a perfect block. And as you can see from the background gameplay of me fighting this wolf spider, it's doing quite a lot of damage. And I also forgot to mention it is a light shield, so as you can see, the wolf spider does get stunned really easily. And because of the fact it does spicy damage over time, the DPS of this shield is actually insanely good, and I would highly recommend using this shield, as currently it is the best light shield in the game. And with that, let's move on to the last unique shield. For the last unique shield inside of Grounded 2, it is the Scarlet Aegis. And currently, right now, the Scarlet Aegis is the only unique heavy shield in the entire game, with its effect being Parry Buggy Heal. And it does exactly as it sounds, as every time you parry, your buggy will heal a certain percentage of its health back. So if you want to support your buggy as much as possible and don't want them dying in fights for example like Axel's, then I would highly recommend using this shield. And with all of the unique shields out of the way, here is some gear I would highly recommend using with shields. For the first piece of gear on this list, I'm starting out with the Ladybug armor. The Ladybug armor has a bonus called Bargain Block. And what Bargain Block does is it reduces the amount of stamina drain attacks do to your shield. Or in other words, you lose less stamina from blocking attacks normally. And this pairs really well with shields, as with the right build, you could technically block infinitely as long as the enemy doesn't have a hard-hitting attack or a bunch of spammy attacks that can break your block easily. The final thing I want to talk about with the Ladybug armor is the set bonus called Scarlet Embrace. And what Scarlet Embrace does is each time you block an attack, you gain a slight, kind of bootleggish trickle regen effect. This effect doesn't last as long as trickle regen, nor does it heal you for as much, but it's still a passive healing effect that pairs really well with the shields inside of the game. So the next armor that pairs really well with shields is going to be the Snail armor, and the Snail armor's armor piece bonus is going to be block stun. And what block stun does is each time you block, you will actually deal a little bit of stun damage to whatever you're fighting. However, this stat is actually misinforming you, but not in the way you think. You see, although the stat says it only happens on just normal blocks, it can also occur when you parry as well. So even if you don't just normally block to build up the stun damage, you can also just parry with the Snail armor to get the same effect out of it. For the set bonus of this armor, it is going to be Retaliation, and what Retaliation does is when you block an attack, it stacks up to 5 times, and when you do a charged attack, it does this super strong AoE attack. And this pairs really well with shields, as you could just block with the shield and then constantly get that retaliation effect. And as you can see in this clip, I use it on Axel and he pretty much gets stunned immediately. Moving on to the weapons portion of the gear, I would say the best weapon for shields, in my opinion, is more than likely going to be the Pinchwhacker. And the reason why is because combined with a few other factors such as the Snail armor and, well, shields, you can do an insane amount of stun damage. I also forgot to mention Smasher. With that, you can pretty much stun any enemy in the game within like the first 10 seconds of fighting them, and then deal essentially over half of their health within like the first 10 seconds of a fight. And I'm not even exaggerating about that either. And for the next weapon I would recommend to use with shields, it is going to be the Crimson Avenger. The Crimson Avenger deals 20% more crits to spiders, so using this against a wolf spider as seen here or against Axel will do absolute wonders. In my opinion, I would highly recommend using a buckler with this or a small shield, as with the bucklers, you will be able to do a lot more stun damage, and especially if you're using the bomb buckler to get a little bit of extra damage and status effect damage from just using it. And for the final weapon I would recommend using with shields, it is going to be Axel's Talon. And Axel's Talon is actually quite a beast of a weapon. For starters, it does venom. And on top of that, with Javelineer as a mutation, you can actually do more charged attack damage, meaning this could also pair up really well with the Snail armor, as with the retaliation bonus, your charged attacks will hit like an absolute truck. And with that, that is pretty much my entire guide to shield. So if y'all enjoyed this video, please make sure to like and subscribe, as it'll help me out a ton. And if you love Grounded 2, you will love my content, and I will see you all in the next video. Peace.